Every parent knows the worry that comes with sending their child to school. Will they make friends? Will they fit in? Will they be happy? But what happens when a child chooses to sit alone? Not because they're excluded, but because they're including someone others can't see. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that remind us what truly matters in life. Today's story takes place on the set of Little Big Shots, where Steve Harvey has met thousands of talented kids from around the world. But one 6-year-old girl named Emma was about to teach him, and everyone watching, a lesson about compassion that would leave the entire studio in tears and remind us all why kindness matters more than popularity. What started as a simple question about school lunch turned into a revelation about invisible friends, visible love, and how one first grader's choice to sit alone was actually the most powerful act of inclusion anyone had ever witnessed. The studio lights gleamed brightly as 6-year-old Emma Martinez walked onto the stage. She wore a bright yellow dress with sunflowers on it, her favorite dress, the one she called her happy dress. Her dark hair was pulled back in 2 neat braids, and she carried a worn teddy bear named Mr. buttons under her arm. Steve Harvey, the show's host, greeted her with his signature warm smile. He'd interviewed hundreds of kids on this show, each one special in their own way, but there was something about Emma's quiet confidence that immediately caught his attention. "Well, hello there, young lady," Steve said, bending down to her level. "What's your name?" "Emma Sophia Martinez," she said clearly, though her voice was soft. "I'm 6 3/4 years old." The audience chuckled at the precision. Steve grinned. 6 3/4? That 3/4 is very important. Yes, Emma nodded seriously. "Because every day matters." Steve raised his eyebrows, intrigued already. Every day matters. That's pretty wise for 6 3/4. "Now, Emma, what brings you to Little Big Shots today? Do you sing? Dance? Got a special talent?" Emma shook her head. "I don't have a talent like that, but my teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, said I do something special at school. So she sent a video to your show. I didn't know she did it until your people called my mom." Steve's curiosity was clearly piqued. "So, Emma, your teacher sent us a video of you at lunch. Can you tell me what we saw in that video?" Emma hugged Mr. Buttons a little tighter. "You saw me and Sophie having lunch." "Sophie," Steve repeated. "And who is Sophie?" "She's my best friend," Emma said simply. Emma lived in a small town in Arizona with her mother, Anna, a nurse who worked long hours at the local hospital, and her father, Miguel, who owned a small auto repair shop. They weren't wealthy, but their home was filled with love, laughter, and the smell of Anna's homemade tortillas. Emma was an only child, which some might think would make her lonely, but Emma had never seemed lonely to her parents. Even as a toddler, she'd been content playing by herself, creating elaborate imaginary worlds with her toys, always talking to someone they couldn't see. Emma had started first grade 3 months earlier at Sunshine Elementary School. Her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, was a veteran educator who'd taught for 27 years. She'd seen thousands of children pass through her classroom, but Emma had caught her attention in the first week of school. Not because Emma was disruptive or struggled academically, quite the opposite. Emma was bright, attentive, and kind. What caught Mrs. Rodriguez's attention was what happened every day at lunch. At Sunshine Elementary, first graders ate lunch in the cafeteria at 11:30 sharp. The room would fill with the happy chaos of 6-year-olds chattering, trading snacks, and forming the early bonds of friendship. Long tables accommodated 8 to 10 children each, and most kids scrambled to sit with their friends. But every single day, Emma would take her lunch tray, usually a peanut butter and jelly sandwich her mom had packed, an apple, some carrots, and a juice box, and walk past all the tables full of laughing children. She'd go to the back corner of the cafeteria to a small table meant for 2 and sit down by herself. The first week, Mrs. Rodriguez assumed Emma was shy and needed time to adjust to school. The second week, she wondered if Emma was being excluded by the other children. She watched carefully during recess and class time, but Emma seemed to get along fine with her classmates. She participated in group activities, shared her crayons, and played tag during recess. It was only at lunch that Emma chose isolation. By the third week, Mrs. Rodriguez decided to investigate. She sat down next to Emma at the small table one Tuesday. "Emma, sweetie, why don't you sit with the other children at lunch?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked gently. Emma looked up from her sandwich, her brown eyes serious. "I can't, Mrs. Rodriguez. Sophie needs me." "Sophie," Mrs. Rodriguez glanced around. There was no other child at the table. "Who's Sophie, honey?" Emma pointed to the empty chair across from her. "She's right there. She sits with me every day." Mrs. Rodriguez's heart sank a little. An imaginary friend. It wasn't unusual for children Emma's age, but sitting alone every day because of an imaginary friend was concerning. "Emma, you know Sophie isn't real, right? Wouldn't you like to sit with real friends?" Emma's expression became patient, as if she were the teacher explaining something to a student who didn't quite understand. "Sophie is real, Mrs. Rodriguez. Just because you can't see her doesn't mean she isn't there. And she needs a friend more than I do." Mrs. Rodriguez decided to observe more carefully. Over the next 2 weeks, she watched Emma at lunch every day. What she saw was remarkable. Emma would talk to the empty chair, but not in the way children usually talk to imaginary friends. She would ask questions and then wait, as if listening to responses. She would share her sandwich, carefully placing half of it on the other side of the table. She would laugh at things no one else could hear. And most touching of all, she would sometimes reach across the table as if holding someone's hand. One day, Mrs. Rodriguez heard Emma say, "It's okay, Sophie, I know you're scared, but you're not alone. I promise you'll never be alone again." That's when Mrs. Rodriguez realized this was more than a typical imaginary friend scenario. There was something deeper happening here. With Anna's permission, Mrs. Rodriguez recorded Emma at lunch one day. The video showed Emma sitting at her small table, carefully arranging everything. She placed her lunchbox on her side, then pulled out a second napkin and placed it across from her. "There you go, Sophie," Emma said to the empty chair. "Today, Mom packed extra carrots because I told her you love carrots." The video captured Emma breaking her sandwich in half and placing one half on the napkin across from her. She poured half her juice into a small cup she'd brought from home. Then Emma folded her hands and said a little prayer. "Thank you for this food and for friendship, and please help Sophie feel safe today. Amen." For the next 20 minutes, Emma ate her lunch while carrying on a full conversation with the empty chair. She talked about the math lesson from that morning, asked questions about Sophie's favorite color, and told jokes that made her giggle. At one point in the video, a group of girls walked by Emma's table. "Emma, why don't you come sit with us?" one girl asked. Emma smiled politely. "Thank you, but I can't today. Sophie needs me." The girls shrugged and walked away. They didn't tease Emma or seem bothered. They'd simply accepted this was what Emma did. What made the video truly special was the end. As lunch was finishing, Emma reached across the table, her small hand extended as if holding someone's hand. "I'm really glad you're here, Sophie," Emma said softly. "I know things are hard for you, but it's going to be okay. You have me and I have you, and that's what friends do. They stick together." Mrs. Rodriguez watched the video multiple times, each time getting more emotional. This wasn't a child with a social problem. This was a child with an extraordinary capacity for empathy and loyalty. On impulse, Mrs. Rodriguez submitted the video to Little Big Shots. She wrote a simple message: "This 6-year-old sits alone at lunch every day by choice. Her reason will restore your faith in children." 3 weeks later, Emma and her family got the call. Back on the stage, Steve Harvey looked at Emma with growing curiosity. The audience had fallen quiet, sensing something special was about to happen. "Your best friend," Steve said. "And Sophie goes to your school?" "Yes," Emma nodded. "She's in my class." Steve looked genuinely confused now. "She's in your class, so why doesn't she sit with you at lunch? Why isn't she in that video?" Emma's expression became patient again, that same look she'd given Mrs. Rodriguez. "She is sitting with me, Mr. Harvey. She's right there in the video. You just can't see her." A murmur went through the audience. Steve's eyebrows shot up. "Oh, okay. So Sophie is an imaginary friend." "No," Emma said firmly. "Sophie is real. She's just invisible." Steve sat down on the stage floor, getting on Emma's level. This was getting interesting. "Invisible. Okay, Emma, can you tell me about Sophie? What's she like?" Emma's face lit up. "Sophie is 7 years old, so she's a little older than me. She has blonde hair that she wears in a ponytail, and she has blue eyes. She likes the color purple, and her favorite food is carrots. She's really good at drawing, way better than me." Steve listened intently. "She sounds like a great friend." "Now, Emma, I have to ask, and I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just trying to understand. Why do you think Sophie is invisible?" "I don't think she's invisible, Mr. Harvey. She is invisible, but only to grown-ups and other kids. I can see her perfectly." "And when did you meet Sophie?" Emma thought for a moment. "The first day of school, I walked into Mrs. Rodriguez's classroom, and Sophie was sitting at the desk next to mine. She looked really sad and scared. So during free time, I went over and asked if she wanted to be friends." "What did she say?" Steve asked, completely drawn into Emma's story. "She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me like she couldn't believe I was talking to her. Then she asked, 'You can see me?' And I said, 'Of course I can see you.' That's when she started crying, but they were happy tears. The audience was silent now, hanging on every word. Sophie told me that no one had been able to see her for a really long time, not since she left. Steve prompted gently, or Emma's voice became softer. Left her old life. She said something bad happened, and then she was alone for a very long time. She was in the school, but no one could see her or hear her. She tried to talk to kids and teachers, but they just walked right through her. She said it was the loneliest feeling in the world." Steve felt a chill run down his spine. The studio had become incredibly quiet, but then I came to first grade and I could see her. She said I was the first person who could see her in a really, really long time. And she asked if I would be her friend, even though she's different. I said yes, because everybody deserves a friend, so that's why you sit with her at lunch. Steve asked, his voice gentle. "Yes," Emma nodded. "The cafeteria is the hardest place for Sophie. All the kids are sitting together, laughing and talking, and Sophie remembers when she used to do that too. She gets really sad watching everyone else have fun together. So I sit with her, I talk to her, I share my lunch with her. I hold her hand when she gets scared. But Emma," Steve said carefully, "wouldn't Sophie want you to sit with the other kids and make other friends?" Emma shook her head. I have other friends. I play with them at recess and sit with them in class. But lunch is Sophie's time. She needs to know that someone chooses her. Not because they have to, but because they want to. Steve had to pause for a moment, visibly emotional. That's Emma. That's one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard a child say. My mom says that love isn't about picking the easy thing. It's about picking the right thing even when it's hard. Emma, can I ask you something? Steve said. Do your parents know about Sophie? Yes, I told them on my first day of school. Mom asked if I made any friends, and I said, yes, I made a friend named Sophie, but she's invisible. At first, they thought I was just making up stories, but then I kept talking about her every day. I told them about Sophie's favorite things, about how she's scared of loud noises, about how she cries sometimes when she thinks about her family. Her family. Steve leaned forward. Sophie had a mom and a dad and a little brother. She misses them so much. She talks about them all the time. She said they can't see her anymore, and she can't see them. That's the part that makes her the saddest. There wasn't a dry eye in the studio audience now. Steve had to take a moment to compose himself. Emma, has it ever bothered you that other kids think you're strange for sitting alone? Emma considered this. Some kids asked me about it at first. I told them I was sitting with a friend. They don't understand, but they're nice about it. My friend Riley said she thinks it's cool that I have an invisible friend. And my friend Marcus asked me to tell Sophie hi for him, even though he can't see her. What about kids who aren't nice about it? Has anyone made fun of you? There was one boy, Tommy, who said I was weird and that Sophie wasn't real. That made me sad, not for me, but for Sophie. She heard it too, and she cried. I told her not to listen to Tommy because she is real to me and that's what matters. What happened with Tommy? Steve asked. Well, the next day, Tommy fell on the playground and scraped his knee really bad. Everyone else kept playing, but I went over to help him. Sophie came with me, even though she was scared. I helped Tommy to the nurse, and afterward, he said thank you. He doesn't call me weird anymore. Sometimes he waves at the empty chair next to me at lunch just to be nice. Steve shook his head in amazement. Emma, you are an extraordinary little girl. Do you know that? Emma shrugged. I'm just trying to be a good friend. Steve stood up, pacing for a moment, trying to figure out how to ask his next question. The audience watched, completely absorbed in this interaction. Emma, I need to ask you something and I want you to really think about it, okay? Okay, Emma said. You're 6 3/4 years old. That means you have a whole life ahead of you. Making friends, going to birthday parties, being part of groups. But right now, you're choosing to sit alone at lunch every single day. Doesn't that make you sad sometimes? Don't you ever wish you could just sit with the other kids and not worry about Sophie? Emma was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was clear and certain. Mr. Harvey, can I tell you something my grandma told me before she died? Of course, sweetheart, grandma had cancer, and I didn't really understand what that meant, but I knew she was sick. One day, I asked her why God let her get sick. And you know what she said? Steve waited, his eyes glistening. She said that sometimes God gives us hard things not to punish us, but to show us what we're made of. She said that the easiest thing in the world is to only care about people who are easy to care about. But real love is caring about people who need it most, even when it's hard, even when no one else understands. Emma hugged Mr. Buttons closer. Grandma said she could see angels sometimes sitting with her when she was scared in the hospital. She said they were invisible to everyone else, but she could see them clear as day, and they made her less lonely. The entire studio was crying now, including the cameramen and producers. Steve wiped his eyes. When Grandma died, I was really sad. But then I met Sophie, and I remembered what Grandma said about angels. Maybe Sophie isn't exactly an angel, but she's real to me, and she's lonely. And if sitting with her at lunch means she's a little less lonely, then that's not sad. That's what Grandma would want me to do. Steve Harvey stood silent for a long moment, tears streaming down his face. In his decades of television, hosting game shows and talk shows, meeting people from all walks of life, he had rarely been moved like this. He sat down next to Emma on the stage floor, not caring that his expensive suit would wrinkle. Emma, he said, his voice thick with emotion, I need to tell you something. Can I tell you something? Emma nodded. I'm 67 years old. I've met presidents and celebrities. I've talked to people who've done incredible things. But right now, sitting here with you, I am learning more about what it means to be a good person than I have in a very long time. He paused, gathering his thoughts. You know what most people do when they see someone sitting alone? They ignore them. They tell themselves it's not their problem. Or they assume that person wants to be alone. But you, at 6 years old, you chose to sit with someone everyone else ignores. Whether Sophie is an imaginary friend or a guardian angel or something we can't understand, you are showing her that she matters. She does matter, Emma said simply. Yes, she does. And you know what else? Whether you realize it or not, you're teaching every single person in this studio, everyone watching at home, one of the most important lessons in life. What's that? Emma asked. That the loneliest people are often the ones no one can see. Not because they're invisible like Sophie, but because we're all so busy with our own lives that we stop seeing the people who are hurting right in front of us. Steve turned to face the audience. How many of us have walked past someone who needed a friend? How many times have we been so focused on our own friend groups that we didn't notice the person sitting alone? This little girl is showing us that it costs nothing to be kind. It costs nothing to choose to see someone, to sit with them, to let them know they matter. Now, Emma, I want to do something for you. Is that okay? Okay, Emma said, I want to make sure that both you and Sophie have the best lunch possible from now on. So I've arranged for a local restaurant in your town to deliver lunch to you and Sophie every single day for the next year. Whatever you want. Pizza, sandwiches, fruit, vegetables, especially those carrots Sophie loves. The audience applauded, but Steve held up his hand. I'm not done. I also want to do something for your school. Rodriguez told us that Sunshine Elementary has a lot of kids who sometimes sit alone at lunch, not by choice like you, but because they don't have friends yet, or because they're new, or because they're struggling. So we're going to create something called the Sophie's Friend Table. It's going to be a special table in your cafeteria where anyone can sit if they're feeling lonely. And the rule of the table is that you can't leave anyone sitting there alone. If someone is sitting at the Sophie's Friend Table, other kids are encouraged to go sit with them. Emma's eyes lit up. Sophie would love that. And Steve continued, we're going to start a program at your school called Lunch Buddies, where older kids can sign up to have lunch with younger kids who might need a friend. We want to make sure that no child at Sunshine Elementary ever has to feel invisible. The audience erupted in applause. Emma clapped too, her face glowing with joy. But Emma, the most important thing I want to tell you is this. Don't ever let anyone make you feel weird or strange for being kind. The world needs more people like you. People who choose compassion over popularity. People who see those who others ignore. People who believe in things others can't see. Steve gestured to the side of the stage. Emma, I believe your mom is here. Can we bring her out? Anna Martinez walked onto the stage, tears streaming down her face. She rushed to Emma and hugged her tightly. Steve gave them a moment, then invited Anna to sit with them. Anna, you've raised an incredible daughter, Steve said. Anna wiped her eyes. I don't know how this happened. My husband and I, we just try to teach her to be kind. But this thing with Sophie, it's been challenging. We've questioned whether we should discourage it, whether Emma needs help. We've been so worried. What do you think now? Steve asked. Anna looked at her daughter, then back at Steve. I think my 6-year-old understands something about love and loyalty that took me 40 years to learn. She's teaching us. Every day when she comes home from school, she tells us about Sophie, about how Sophie is getting braver, how she laughed at lunch, how she's not as scared anymore. And I realized that whether Sophie is real or imaginary, what Emma is doing is absolutely real. She's practicing compassion. She's learning to love the unlovable, to see the invisible, to care about someone even when it costs her something. Cost her? Steve asked. Time with other friends. The ability to just be a carefree 6-year-old. She carries this responsibility to Sophie every day. Some nights she cries because Sophie was sad. She feels Sophie's pain. And yes, I've asked myself if that's too much for a little girl. But then I see the person she's becoming and I think this is what the world needs. More people who feel other people's pain and choose to do something about it. Steve turned to the cameras. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to air this episode, and I predict it's going to touch millions of people. But I want to use this platform to say something important. There are Sophies everywhere. In our schools, our workplaces, our neighborhoods. People who feel invisible. People who are lonely. People who are hurting in ways we can't see. And just like Emma showed us, it only takes one person who cares to change someone's entire world. I'm challenging everyone watching this. The next time you're at lunch, at school, at work, wherever, look around. Is there someone sitting alone? Is there someone who seems like they need a friend? Be like Emma. Choose to see them. Choose to sit with them. Choose to let them know they matter. The audience rose in a standing ovation. Emma smiled, waving to the crowd while still holding Mr. Buttons. Emma, Steve said as the applause died down, is Sophie here with us right now? Emma looked to her left as if checking with someone, then nodded. Yes, she's right here next to me. Well, Sophie, Steve said, addressing the empty space beside Emma, thank you for having such a wonderful friend, and thank you for teaching all of us a lesson about what really matters. Emma smiled. Sophie says thank you for believing her. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. When the episode of Little Big Shots aired 3 weeks later, the response was unprecedented. The clip of Emma explaining why she sits alone at lunch went viral within hours, reaching over 50 million views in the first week alone. Comments poured in from around the world. I'm a teacher, and this made me look at my students differently. Tomorrow, I'm starting a lunch buddy program at my school. I was the kid who sat alone at lunch. I'm 35 now, and I still remember how lonely it felt. Emma just validated every lonely kid in the world. My daughter has an imaginary friend, and I was trying to discourage it. After seeing this, I realize she's developing compassion and empathy. I'm not going to stop her. I work in a corporate office, and there's a guy who always eats lunch alone. Tomorrow, I'm going to ask if I can join him. Thank you, Emma. At Sunshine Elementary, the Sophie's Friend table became an instant success. Principal Henderson had it decorated with bright colors and placed in a central location in the cafeteria. A sign above it read, "Friends of Sophie welcome here. No one sits alone." What happened next was beautiful. Instead of being seen as the lonely table, it became the most popular spot in the cafeteria. Kids would actively choose to sit there knowing they might meet someone new. Older students would purposely eat there to welcome younger students. It became a bridge between different grades, different social groups, different backgrounds. Mrs. Rodriguez implemented the Lunch Buddies program Steve Harvey had suggested. 5th and 6th graders signed up in record numbers to be paired with 1st and 2nd graders during lunch. The program expanded to include homework help after school and reading buddies. Bullying incidents decreased dramatically at Sunshine Elementary. When kids started practicing empathy during lunch, it carried over to other parts of the day. Schools across the country began requesting information about the Sophie's Friend table concept. Within 6 months, over 500 schools had implemented similar programs. The movement spread internationally. Schools in Canada, the UK, Australia, and even Japan created their own versions. A children's book author wrote a story inspired by Emma called The Girl Who Sees. It became a bestseller, teaching children about empathy, inclusion, and seeing beyond what's visible. Emma herself became a symbol of childhood compassion. She was invited to speak with her parents' help at education conferences. Her simple message never changed. Everyone deserves a friend, even if you're the only one who can see them. In the months following the show, Emma's daily reports about Sophie began to change. According to Emma, Sophie was becoming less sad, less scared. She smiled more. She talked more about happy memories instead of just missing her family. Sophie says she feels seen now, Emma told her mother one evening. Not just by me, but by everyone. She says all those people who watched the show and started being kind to lonely people, that made her feel less alone too, like maybe her being invisible had a purpose. 6 months after the Little Big Shots episode aired, Emma came home from school with surprising news. "Mom, something happened with Sophie today." Anna's heart raced. "What happened, honey?" "At lunch, Sophie told me that she doesn't feel invisible anymore. She said that because I chose to see her when no one else could, she learned something important." What did she learn? Emma's eyes were bright with tears, but they were happy tears. She learned that even when we can't see someone, even when we feel invisible, there's always someone who cares. And because she knows that now, she says she's ready. Ready for what? Anna asked gently, ready to go home, her real home. She says her family has been waiting for her, and now she's ready to be with them again. Anna held her daughter close as Emma cried. Whether Sophie was real or imaginary, the goodbye was very real to Emma. "Did you get to say goodbye?" Anna asked. Emma nodded. She said thank you for being her friend when she needed one most. And she said that whenever I see someone sitting alone, that's her way of reminding me that I did a good thing and I should keep doing it. 2 years after her appearance on Little Big Shots, 8-year-old Emma no longer sits at the small table alone. She sits with a rotating group of friends, always making sure to welcome new students and kids who seem lonely. But every Friday, she still places 2 napkins at lunch, one for her and one for Sophie's memory. And every Friday, she makes sure to sit with someone new, someone who might need a friend. The Sophie's Friend table at Sunshine Elementary has become a permanent fixture, and the concept has spread to over 2,000 schools worldwide. Emma receives letters from children and adults telling her how her story changed their lives. Steve Harvey stayed in touch with the Martinez family. He features the Sophie's Friend table initiative annually on his show, sharing updates on its impact. He keeps a photo of Emma in his office, alongside photos of his own children as a reminder of the day a 6-year-old taught him what really matters. Emma's story teaches us several profound lessons. Invisible struggles are real. Many people feel invisible, lonely, unseen, unheard. Just because we can't see their pain doesn't mean it's not real. Kindness costs nothing. Sitting with someone at lunch, smiling at a stranger, asking someone how they're doing, these simple acts can transform someone's day or even their life. Choose compassion over popularity. Emma could have chosen to sit with the popular kids, to have an easier social life. She chose compassion instead, and it made all the difference. Children lead the way. Sometimes the wisest teachers are the smallest people. Children often understand love and inclusion better than adults. One person can make a difference. Emma was just one 6-year-old girl, but her choice to see Sophie created a movement that touched millions. Steve Harvey, in a follow-up segment, shared this message. Emma taught me that every single one of us has a choice every single day. We can walk past the lonely person, or we can sit with them. We can ignore the new kid, or we can welcome them. We can pretend not to see the pain in someone's eyes, or we can acknowledge it and offer comfort. Emma chose to see Sophie when no one else could. Who is the Sophie in your life? Who is the person you've been walking past, ignoring, pretending not to see? What would happen if you chose to see them today? Emma Sophia Martinez, now 8 3/4 years old, because every day matters, continues to live by the lesson her grandmother taught her. Real love is caring about people who need it most, even when it's hard, even when no one else understands. Sophie may have been invisible to everyone else, but to Emma she was as real as anyone. And in choosing to see Sophie, Emma taught the world to see each other with new eyes, eyes of compassion, understanding, and love. The small table in the back corner of the cafeteria at Sunshine Elementary now holds a plaque that reads, "In memory of Sophie, who taught us that everyone deserves to be seen." The Sophie's Friend table, where no one sits alone. And every day at 11:30, children gather at that table, practicing the simple but profound act of choosing to see each other, to include each other, to remind each other that no one is truly invisible when someone cares enough to look. Emma's message remains simple and powerful. Everyone deserves a friend, even if you're the only one who can see them. In a world that often rushes past the lonely, the hurting, the invisible, Emma reminds us to slow down, to look around, to see who needs to be seen. Because sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply sit down next to someone and say, "You're not alone. I see you." If Emma's story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. Let's create a world where no one has to feel invisible. Together we can be like Emma, choosing compassion, choosing to see, choosing to care. Leave a comment below telling us about a time you chose to sit with someone who was alone or a time someone sat with you. Let's fill this comment section with stories of kindness and inclusion. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and most importantly, go be someone's friend today. The world needs more people like Emma. The world needs more people like you.